What's up, fantasy managers? Welcome back to another episode of the First Pitch Podcast brought to you by PitcherList.com. My name is Jake Crumpler, and I'll be your host for this edition of the pod. You can follow me on socials at Jake Crumpler, and you can find all of my work at CrumplerBaseball.com. Let's dive into everything baseball related from Tuesday, August 19th. We'll start things off, as always, with the transactions, injuries, news, and notes from around the league, kicking things off with the bad news as catcher Francisco Alvarez was placed on the 10-day IL with a thumb sprain. The sprain will require surgery. However, the Mets are attempting to avoid surgery and have Alvarez play through that injury. The decision regarding that will be made when he's reevaluated in 10 to 14 days. So in a couple weeks, we'll have a determination regarding Alvarez's ability to play the rest of the season or into the playoffs. But right now, it's not looking great. It's been a rough season injury-wise for Francisco Alvarez. It looks like Luis Torrens will take over as the everyday catcher for the time being for the Mets, and Hayden Sanger was recalled from the minors in a corresponding move and will be the backup to Torrens behind the plate. In terms of transactions, starting pitcher Bryce Miller was activated from the 15-day IL to start in Philadelphia after missing quite some time with elbow inflammation. He looked pretty solid in his return, nothing special, but 5 innings, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 walks, and 4 Ks for Miller in Philadelphia. He did induce 15 whiffs with 32% CSW across 85 pitches, so pretty good underlying stuff. He also displayed increased velocity, so that gives me some hope that in his next start against the Padres, he can look like the Bryce Miller that was incredible over the first couple years of his career. Next, we have relief pitcher Jose Alvarado, who was reinstated from the restricted list after missing the past 60 games after being suspended for performance-enhancing drug usage. He won't be the closer in Philadelphia, but he should be one of the top holds options and will be relied upon heavily down the stretch by the Phillies because he can't pitch in the postseason. So there's really no risk of overusing him before that. And the Phillies won't want to tax the rest of their bullpen. So they will be relying heavily on Alvarado, which means he could be a great option in save plus holds leagues. Lastly, we have starting pitcher Jameson Taillon, who was activated from the 15-day IL to start versus the Brewers in the second half of the doubleheader they played yesterday. Taillon had missed some time with a calf strain and looked great in his return against the best team in baseball, tossing 6 innings, allowing 5 hits and 1 earned run while walking 1 and striking out 4. He induced 4 whiffs with 26% CSW across 92 pitches. And I think Taillon needs to be rostered everywhere. He's been very reliable this season, and the Cubs do give him a good chance at a win every time out. And he'll get the Angels in LA up next. And that's a start I'm definitely sending Taillon out for. In terms of news, starting pitcher J.P. Sears is expected to be recalled from the minors today to start versus the Giants. He was surprisingly optioned to the minors after being acquired from the A's at the deadline. The Padres optioned him after just 1 start, so we'll see what he can do in San Francisco in his return. Next, we have starting pitcher Johan Oviedo, who's expected to be recalled from the minors today to start versus the Blue Jays. He missed a lot of the season or all of the season prior to his last start a couple weeks ago after undergoing Tommy John surgery, I'm pretty sure, but he looked not great in his return, and so he was optioned back to the minors. Oviedo is looking to return and make this start against the Blue Jays much more successful than his first start of the season. Next, we have starting pitcher Parker Messick, who is expected to have his contract selected from the minors today to start in Arizona. Messick is Cleveland's number 12 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, and he's looked pretty solid at AAA with a 3.47 ERA and a 29% strikeout rate in 20 starts. Obviously, I am not going to suggest starting a pitcher in his MLB debut, but he's certainly someone to keep an eye on. The Guardians are great at pitching development, and they're even better once they get to the majors. So I'm excited to see what Messick can do for the Guardians down the stretch. And lastly, starting pitcher Lance McCullers Jr., who's been out with a blister on his finger, is expected to be activated from the 15-day IL on Friday to start in Baltimore. In terms of notable, now we can take a look at our notable performances from Tuesday, a day in which we had a full slate of 16 games. We had a doubleheader between the Brewers and the Cubs. We'll start it off with our hitters, leading off with designated hitter Giancarlo Stanton, who helped the Yankees to win in Tampa Bay, going 2 for 3 with 2 runs, 2 home runs, and 4 runs batted in. He also included a walk for good measure. He's up to 14 homers on the year now. First one traveled 386 feet at 104 miles per hour. Second one went 376 feet at 103 miles per hour. And Stanton led the Yankees to a franchise record tying 9 home runs on on Tuesday and continued what has been one of the best seasons of his career when he's been able to take the field, limited to just 45 games after missing the first 2.5 months dealing with injuries in both of his elbows. Stanton is sporting an OPS north of 1,000 for the first time since his MVP winning 2017 campaign, and even more notably, the 162 WRC plus he entered Tuesday with, which is only going to improve after Tuesday's performance, is actually the best of his career, which is saying something considering how good he was with the Marlins. And I don't really expect Stanton to finish the season with the best WRC plus of his career, as his 378 BABIP is obviously unsustainable, but it is supported by a career high 56% hard hit rate and newfound patience that has Stanton swinging less often than he has for the past 5 years. The tough part about rostering Stanton, though, is his lack of positional eligibility. Outside of Yahoo leagues, he's only DH eligible, which can put a strain on roster flexibility. In leagues where he does have outfielder eligibility, I'd be rostering Stanton because he's mashing the ball at one of the best clips of his entire career, and he's already one of the best hitters in baseball history, probably a future Hall of Famer if he can reach 500 homers, and he is in the middle of a deadly Yankees lineup that is currently on fire, as evidenced by the 9 homers they hit on Tuesday. However, I'm still hesitant to pick him up in leagues where he's stuck in a utility role. Next, we have third baseman Brett Baty, who helped the Mets to win in Washington, our nation's capital, going 1 for 3 with a run, a home run, an RBI, and a walk. He's up to 14 homers now, and this one traveled 428 feet at 110 miles per hour. The Brett Baty breakout has been a long time coming, and while he hasn't broken out in full in 2025, he's produced by far the most impressive offensive season of his career, and he's only gotten better in the second half, already sporting a career-high 240 average, 14 homers, 6 steals, and a WRC plus north of 100, all those career highs for Brett Baty. He's taken things to another level since the All-Star break, batting .279 with 4 dingers and a 129 WRC plus, and that's not even counting Tuesday's long ball. The most obvious change Baty's made this year has been to his batted ball quality, which supports the offensive breakout that he's had. His 13% barrel rate and 45% hard hit rate suggest he could even maintain and improve upon his current numbers. With multi-position eligibility at third base and second base, Baty is someone to roster in the majority of leagues, with his only downside being his lack of success and playing time against southpaws. Lastly, we have second baseman Willie Castro, who helped the Cubs to a win in the first game, and I guess also the second game of their doubleheader versus the Brewers. I say I guess because in the second game, he went 0 for 1 in a pinch hitting appearance, but in the first game, he went 1 for 4 with a run, a home run, and 3 runs batted in. It was his 11th homer of the year, and it traveled 402 feet at 102 miles per hour. But Castro hasn't really received everyday playing time since being acquired from the Twins at the trade deadline, instead being deployed as a utility man as the Cubs lean into his ability to play all over the field. And with top prospect Owen Casey taken away from Castro's opportunities in the outfield, he is starting to become obsolete in fantasy leagues. And to put the nail in the coffin, Castro has struggled to a negative WRC plus since heading to Chicago after being north of 100 with the Twins. Still rostered in 30% of Yahoo leagues, I think it's time to drop Willie Castro. But if you'd like a breakdown of other notable hitting performances, check out the daily Batters Box article over on pitcherlist.com. Now we'll head to the mound and check out some notable starting pitching performances, opening with David Peterson, who helped the Mets to win in our nation's capital, tossing 8 innings, allowing 4 hits and 1 run, while walking 1 and punching out 10. He induced 18 whiffs with 42% CSW across 96 pitches and earned the King Cole as that 42% CSW led baseball on Tuesday. Peterson reached double-digit strikeouts for the first time this year, dominating a righty-leaning Nationals lineup that allowed him to pump sinkers in the zone all game, leading to 4 whiffs and 42% CSW on the pitch, while also going 6 out of 7 outs on balls in play. The real breadwinner was Peterson's changeup, playing off the sinker as he kept it low or outside for 7 whiffs and 45% CSW. Meanwhile, 4-seamers upstairs kept Peterson in at bats and returned a pair of whiffs and 31% CSW, while his curve and slider were effective despite limited usage, combining for 5 whiffs and 44% CSW. Peterson has defied my expectations this year. I remember distinctly last fall talking with somebody at First Pitch Arizona and saying, I don't really believe in the second half resurgence from Peterson, but he's proven time and time again that last year's mini breakout was just the beginning of something bigger. And despite the Toby-like 21% strikeout rate, I think we keep starting Peterson in Atlanta up next. Lastly, we've got Christopher Sanchez, who helped the Phillies to win against the Mariners, tossing 6 1/3 innings, allowing 6 hits and 2 earned runs while walking 2 and striking out 12. He induced 22 whiffs with 41% CSW across 96 pitches, and Sanchez punched out a dozen batters for the third time already this season with incredible whiff and CSW numbers that would usually lead baseball, but he has no awards to show for it because Tarek Skubal pitched yesterday and Peterson had a career outing. Regardless, Sanchez deserves attention as he continues one of the best seasons to not receive an all-star selection, 2.46 ERA on the year through 25 starts. The Mariners loaded their lineup with righties against Sanchez, but that was the wrong strategy against the southpaw, whose best pitch is a changeup. The slow ball ate up opposing hit batters with absolutely incredible execution below the zone to the tune of 11 whiffs and 35% CSW, pairing well with his typically reliable slider, which returned 4 whiffs and 42% CSW. The surprise, though, came on the success from his slider, which dominated the few lefty batters he faced and shook things up against righties, as Sanchez spotted it perfectly down and glove side all night for 7 whiffs and 55% CSW. And despite the limited arsenal, Sanchez's execution and command makes him one of the best pitchers in baseball, and there's no reason to hesitate in starting him in Queens up next. But if you'd like a breakdown of every single start from Tuesday, give the Plus Pitch podcast a listen and check out Nick's daily SP roundup over on pitcherlist.com. Now we'll head to the bullpen and check out the relievers that got saves and the closers that pitched outside of save situations or blew their saves. Starting with the former, Daniel Palencia recorded his 17th save with a scoreless ninth. Andrew Kittredge recorded his second save with the perfect ninth as he got the save opportunity there because Palencia pitched in game 1 of the doubleheader. Riley O'Brien called it, got his second save as he pitched a hitless ninth. Jojo Romero actually did pitch in that one. He threw a perfect eighth despite being used on back-to-back days, and that was why I suggested O'Brien would get a save opportunity. Got one regardless of Romero pitching. Yohan Duran pitched a perfect ninth for his 22nd save. Corbin Martin pitched a perfect 11th for his second save. Yeromil Geraldo actually was handed the save opportunity in the ninth in that one, but he served up a game-tying 2-run homer to blow his first save, so he may have to wait a little while longer to get another save opportunity. Raisel Iglesias recorded his 20th save with a perfect ninth. John Schreiber also pitched a perfect ninth to record his first save that was expected, as Carlos Estevez and Lucas Erceg had pitched on back-to-back days. Hogan Harris pitched a perfect ninth for his first career save. No idea why the A's turned to Harris in that one because Sean Newcomb should have been rested enough, though he did pitch back-to-back days a couple days ago. Tony Santillan pitched a perfect ninth for his 4th save. Emilio Pagan was still recovering from back-to-back blown saves earlier this week, so it makes sense that Santillan was used in that outing. And lastly, Andrew Salfrank recorded his 2nd save with the perfect ninth, and he currently leads active Diamondbacks pitchers in saves. Terrible season for the Diamondbacks bullpen. And in terms of closers to pitch outside of save situations or blow their saves, Brian Abreu pitched a perfect ninth in a tie game that the Astros would lose in 10 innings. Kyle Finnegan pitched a perfect 8th before Will Vest pitched a pair of scoreless frames and earned his 6th win when the Tigers walked it off in the 10th. Jeff Hoffman pitched a perfect ninth up by 4. He hadn't pitched since last Friday, so a semi-maintenance outing was actually made useful with the tight score on Tuesday. Aroldis Chapman pitched a hitless 10th with 3 strikeouts in a tie game that the Red Sox would lose in 11. Kenley Jansen pitched the 9th in a tie game and allowed 2 runs to take his 3rd loss. And lastly, Robert Suarez pitched a perfect ninth up by 4. But if you'd like more information on relief pitchers, check out Rick Graham's weekly articles over on pitcherlist.com. And before we look forward to today's games, we're going to take a quick break. Now we'll look forward to Wednesday, August 20th, a day in which we'll have just 14 games on the slate. My matchup of the day is Jesus Luzardo versus Luis Castillo, 2 guys that have shown that in the past they can be some of the most dominant pitchers in baseball, but they've been very inconsistent this year, and now they'll square off against each other. It should be an interesting matchup. We could either have 2 guys blowing up or 2 guys going off, or maybe one or the other. Still should be fun to watch. In terms of probable starters, we've got 2 guys in the auto starts tier. Framber Valdez in Detroit and Noah Cameron versus the Rangers. Our probably starts here as 9 guys, and that's where we'll find our streamer of the day in Cam Schlitter in Tampa Bay. Schlitter's fastball should be able to carry him against the Rays, but if he does get his secondaries down in the zone, he could have an explosive performance. I'd also keep an eye out for JT Ginn in Minnesota. Not only is Ginn facing a lowly Twins lineup, but his stuff is pretty solid. It is a questionable start and pretty low on the list there. However, I think among the other options outside of Schlitter, he is the best one to go for, mostly because the team that he's facing is the worst. Now we'll look at some hitter suggestions. I'd look at Blue Jays hitters versus Johan Oviedo in Rogers Center. I discussed him earlier as he's expected to be recalled from the minors. He looked terrible in his first start back, and the Blue Jays may be able to pounce on him on Wednesday. I'd also look at Diamondbacks and Guardians hitters in Chase Field. We'll see Parker Messick square off against Brandon Pfaadt. Messick is making his MLB debut, so looking for Diamondbacks hitters to take advantage of him there. And Pfaadt is facing the Guardians, who usually load up their lineup with lefties against right-handed pitchers, and Pfaadt has not shown consistent ability to locate his changeup and curveball, which usually would be pitches to help him against a lefty-heavy lineup, and I think the Guardians may be able to pounce on Pfaadt. I'd also target Cardinals and Marlins hitters in Lone Depot Park. We'll see Andre Payante and his 5.04 ERA square off against Sandy Alcantara and his 6.31 ERA. Both of these guys are pitchers that can have success on any given night, but with the ERAs they're sporting both at least over 5, that suggests that we're more likely than not to see an offensive explosion here from the Cardinals and Marlins. And lastly, I'll suggest Dodgers and Rockies hitters in Coors Field. Pretty self-explanatory, best hitters ballpark in baseball. We'll see Shohei Ohtani square off against Colton Gordon, who's got a 7.98 ERA, and he's got a tough matchup against the Dodgers. And now we'll close things out with our relievers to watch. Back to Jojo Romero, who's pitched in 3 games in a row. So expect Riley O'Brien to once again be the top option for a save for the Cardinals on Wednesday. But that'll do it for today's episode of the First Pitch Podcast. Make sure to head on over to pitcherlist.com to check out all of the great articles and features we have on the site. Sign up for PL Plus or PL Pro to gain access to the Discord and to support the Pitcher List staff. You can follow me on socials at Jake Crumpler. Tune in live on YouTube tomorrow and every day for a new installment of the podcast. And make sure to enjoy the day as we are blessed with another day of baseball.